Everybody set up this SQL Server environment. So anybody have any issues in setting up the database in your local systems? Anusha?
Hi, Venki. No issues, Venki. I have installed that.
Okay, you installed it, okay.
Yes, Venki.
Prakati?
Install successfully.
Okay. Rangnath?
Yeah, installed okay.
Okay, great. So let me share my screen. Let's start our today's session. Okay. Hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So in our yesterday's session, we have seen the initial introduction towards database systems, right? So in a database, how the data will be stored, right? So what is a database? What is SQL? And how to set up the database platform in the local systems? We have seen all these things. Okay. Today, we will jump into the SQL, structured query language. So in structured query language, it is also a kind of a programming language which can be utilized to communicate with the database software. Okay. So the SQL programming language initially it got divided into, I mean, the statements in it. SQL programming language have a lot of statements. Okay, so all the statements they segregated into three parts: DDL, DML, DCL. Okay, so data definition language statements, data manipulation language statements, data control language statements. Okay, so these are the three segregations in the basic SQL statements that we have. After these statements, we have SQL string functions, we have date functions, we have joins, we have case when statements. All these things we have, and we will see all of them. But on a typical basic level SQL, so if you see, these are the three categories that we need to start with. Okay, so DDL, data definition language statements, the name itself is stating definition, right? So create is a statement that we will use to create the tables, to create the stored procedures, to create the views, right? So to create the scripts in the SQL. So these are all can be created by using create statement. Alter is also a DDL statement wherein you can do changes to your table names, you can do changes to your column names inside the table, right? If you want to rename your tables, if you want to rename your column names, if you want to rename your column data types, right? So all these things can be done by using alter statement. Drop is something if you want to delete a table permanently, right? And truncate if you want to clean the table. So these are all comes under DDL statements. Okay, and DML comes with all important manipulation statements wherein if you want to retrieve the data from a table, you will always use a select statement. If you want to retrieve the data, if you want to pull the data from a table, you will always use select statement. Okay, if you want to push record, if you want to ingest data to a table, you use insert statement. Okay, if you want to update a record, if you want to modify a particular value of a record, you will use update statement. Okay, if you want to delete a particular row, then you will use delete statement. So select, insert, update, delete, this all will comes under DML statement. Okay, so we have seen DDL and DML statements. Okay, so the high level introduction I'm giving, we will see in depth understanding in our coming slides. Okay, but just for now, understand what create statement will do, what select statement will do, what insert statement will do, all these things. Now coming back to DCL, data control language statements. So data control language statements are grant and revoke. So these are not used by developers. Be very clear, because these statements are strictly restricted to administrators. Okay, so when we went to real time projects, in real time projects, as you are part of a development team, you will always have a support from different administrator teams. For example, you have a server that where actually you are doing the development, and that server have a OS called Linux. Okay, and that in that server database got installed. Okay, so everything is set up and given to you by a administrator team. For Linux, you have a different administrator. For database, you have a different administrator. So those admins will install and configure everything, and they will give it to you. Be very clear on that. And this grant and revoke are related to access permissions. Okay, for example, if a particular user wants a read access on top of a table, if a particular user want update access, select access on top of a table, insert access on top of a table, then this grant and revoke statements will be utilized. Okay, so these are admin related statements. For now, we will concentrate on DDL and DML statements. Okay, I'll explain you the syntax and the example for it, but we don't touch them. Okay, so now let's start with DDL and DML. Before going to this DDL and DML, I just want to give an introduction towards data types in a database system. Okay, so we know what is a data type. We have seen it in the Python itself, right? So when we create a variable, if we are giving a particular value, depending on the value, Python will be treating it as a integer or a string or a float or something. So there are different data types depending on the value. We have seen it already. The concept, we have seen it in Python, right? Similarly, database is also a software which have a communication language called SQL, right? So to communicate with the database, to give instructions to the database software, we need to understand that respective database data types. Be very clear. Okay, so as far as SQL Server is concerned, we have these many different types of data types. Okay, and we have more data types in SQL Server, but I have segregated them as a important data types. I just taken very important data types from the system, and then I have projected here. Okay, so here if you see, you have integer data type, int we'll call it as. Okay, and it's a 4-byte integer. Okay, it will store in 4 bytes internally, and it will range from -2 147 48 36 48 to 2 1 4 7 1 1 4 7 4 8 3 6 47. This is a integer range. For example, if you declared a column, right? So in a table, where we use this data types, guys, let us take an example. In your database system, you are creating a table. Okay, for a typical table, you will be having columns, right? Employee ID, employee name, employee salary. So these are all the columns. So you need to inform your database software saying that, hey, employee ID is an integer column, employee name is a string column. So that kind of instructions you need to provide to your database software, so that it can identify the values, and depending on the values, it can insert the data. Okay, if it mismatches, it won't store the data. Be very, very clear. It is not Python to intelligently extract your types. Okay, before writing your data or before inserting your data, you need to declare your data types in your database table. Be very, very clear. Okay, so now what are all the data types that we have? Int is the first data type that we have to support the numbers. Okay, and it will store 4 bytes internally, and its range is this. Okay, and we have big int data type, wherein if you want to store very huge integer values, okay, very huge integer values, then you have a big int. Okay, so you have big int, and you have small int. Okay, so uh, uh, if you want to store sorry, this is small int is a 2 byte integer. Let me change it, it's not correct. Maybe it's my mistake because of the copy paste. Okay, so it's actually 2 byte integer, and its range is very small only. Okay, so if you want a 4 byte integer storage and with this range in your column, then you will declare that column as an integer type. And similarly, big int is also have sorry, big int is 8 byte integer value. I think it's because of the copy paste issue. Okay, I'll update the ranges later, but understand it's a 8 byte integer value, so it is having more range compared to integer data type. Okay, so as far as numbers are concerned, you have four data types. One is tiny int, integer, big int, small int. Okay, so this is 1 byte integer. Okay, I'll update the ranges later. No problem. Okay, so you have an integer type, you have big int type, you have small int type, and you have tiny int type, and you have char type. So which can be utilized to store characters like strings. Okay, and we have char type, which is actually fixed length. Okay, and which can store up to 8,000 characters. Okay, and here var char is having variable length. Okay, you can change your you know data type to var char for any kind of a strings which can support very huge uh, like strings, right? So you can use var char type. Okay, and it's of variable length. Okay, and it can store non-unicode strings only. Be very, very clear. What do I mean by that? Non-unicode strings means English characters. Okay, var char is only suitable for the English characters. If you want to store national characters, meaning if you want to store some other countries related characters, then you need to go for nvar. Okay, so it will store 4,000 characters in varchar, and varchar will store 8,000 characters. Okay, so depending on the column data, you need to declare these data types, and you have decimal data type also, and you have date data type. So these are few types that we need to be aware. Okay, in a typical database system. So I just add those two data types also. For if a column is of floating point values like points and all, so then we declare that column as a decimal, so that will provide precision and scale. And we have date type. Okay, so these are few data types that you need to be aware when you are learning any of the database system. It may be Oracle, or it may be SQL Server, or it may be any other database in the world. You should go and first see the data types manual for that database. Okay, so In MS SQL, you have these data types, but in Oracle, do not expect the same data types will be there. Okay, in Oracle it will be different case. It will be having something uh, different. Okay, so you need to understand that differences first itself. Okay, so as far as MS SQL is concerned, Microsoft SQL Server is concerned, these are the important critical data types that we regularly use, and we have few other data types also. I request you to go and explore those data types. Okay, so these are the important data types that we use. Okay, so now let's start our statements introduction. So DDL, data definition language statements, right? So the first and foremost statement is create. Okay, create. So create is a statement that we will use to create the tables in the database system. Okay, so we can also create views. We can also create stored procedures. What are views? What are stored procedures? We'll see them later. But for now, understand create is a statement in the SQL. We use this statement to create a table in the database system. In the database system. The syntax for this statement is create table, table name, and columns in the table, column 1 and its type, column 2 and its type. Okay, and you have an optional parameter called constraints. Okay, for now we don't need it. We'll discuss it when we are in the constraints concept. But understand, for a typical table creation, you need column names and their data types. Okay, so now let's go and try to create a table. Okay, so now we have created a test database yesterday, you remember. Okay, we have created a test database yesterday. We know what is a database by now. Okay, now we know the definition of the database, and it's a physical thing that we are experiencing. Okay, so it's an object now. It's a real world entity, which is an object that we are experiencing now. Okay, so now we have created a database. So now inside the database, I want to create a table. Okay, I want to create a table. Okay, so now let us see. Create table. Okay, employee underscore details. Okay, you need to open the braces here. Create a table, employee details. Okay, in this employee details table, I should be storing employee ID, which is of integer type, comma. Oh my God. Okay, so employee ID, which is of integer type. We have seen the data types of SQL Server. So we need to give the column name and its type. So when I was explaining about database systems, I told you these systems are schema on write systems. Be very, very clear. These systems are schema on write systems. Schema on write means you need to specify the metadata of the table before loading the data. Okay, that is what schema on write. When you are writing the data to the table, before in hand, you should declare the metadata of the table. We know the metadata, right? metadata is the data which describes the characteristics of the actual data. Characteristics meaning the attribute names, the data types of that attributes, right? So these things we call them as metadata. Now, schema is also similar to the metadata. Okay, so when we say schema on write, schema is equals to the metadata. But yesterday we have discussed about one more schema. Okay, so that is related to database schema, and now I'm talking about table schema. You have schema. So schema is two types here. One is inside a database you declare schema to classify your tables depending on the functionality. That is one schema, we'll call it as. That's a database schema. But when we say schema on write, it is with respect to table. Be very, very clear. Okay. So it is metadata of the table. So the concept here is when we are inserting the data into the table, before inserting the data, we have to have the metadata of that table. That is what schema or metadata on write system. Okay. So now you want to create a table first before loading the data into the table. We know tables are the objects that will store the data in the database system, right? So we are creating a table now, and the syntax for that create table creation is the create table, okay, and table name, column name, and its type, okay. Now employee name, okay, it's a character or a string type, so I will declare it as varchar of. So how many characters it can store? So you can provide max, so it will store maximum varchar length. Okay, so now you can see here, if you see int of 3, something like that you can specify in this. Okay, but majority of the times we'll leave it to default. Okay, so here if you see employee name, we got department number. It is of I don't need very big integer for this, so I can go for small int. Okay, and emp underscore salary. So it is actually very huge numbers I'll get here, so I'll go for big int. Okay, and then manager underscore IT. It is also very small, so I'm just declaring it. Okay, so this is what the table creation. So here if you see, you have given the table, column names and their types. That's it. So but in which database you want to create this table? In which database you want to create this table? That is important, right? So you need to provide the database name here. I want to create this table in test database dot table name. Okay, so let's go and execute it. Connect to my database. Okay, so here if you see, I'm just selecting the test. Okay, so let me remove this. I just selected. Okay, so this is completed. Okay, so maybe this is the reason, because the syntax will be different for this. retail. Let's go to master. Do this. So I'm just taking the new query here. So I don't know why it is saying this, but yeah, no problem. So it may be the syntax issue. So here, if you see, I am creating a table. You just try to select your database here, okay, and try to create your table directly. Okay, it will create. So here, if you see, employee details is the table that we created, right, in the test database. So now we created the table, right? We created the table. So let us understand where the table is. So you just refresh this contents and go to test database and go to tables, and you see employee details, right? Employee details. So this is a table. So now if you expand it, you will see all the details of it. You will see all the details of it. What are the column names, and then what are its data types, everything you can see. Okay, so this is the create table statement. So how we create a table, right? So now we created the table. So let us understand how we do alter statement, right? So how we will do alter statement. So this alter statement is used to actually add columns, rename tables, rename columns. So we use this alter for all these different uh, metadata changes, right? So if you want to change the table names, if you want to change the column names, if you want to change the column data types, right? So you will use this alter table statement. So see here, I'm altering my employee details table. I'm altering my employee details table. I'm adding address column. This looks like it's a syntax issue. Maybe my database version or something is not correct. It's okay. So we'll understand the basic things.
Venki,
Yeah.
I think you need to remove that column.
Which column, Prakriti?
Add column is there, right?
Yeah.
Try to remove and see.
Yeah, that is what I mean. Initially I tried, but it is giving syntax error.
Okay.
Fine, let me execute it. Incorrect syntax. Okay, so something wrong with this versioning, guys. So let me find out a proper statement. Okay, I'll get back to it later. It's okay, no issues. So even if we remove braces, okay. See, this is something that okay. So we need to remove those braces. That's it. Okay. So okay, so this is the syntax for alter statement, guys. So you can execute whatever you want to change, you can execute by using alter statement. So here, if you see, when I execute this alter statement, add column, twice, it has given error. Be very, very clear on this. Okay. So in a typical table, you cannot duplicate your column names. That is the strict DBMS principle. One of the DBMS principle in a typical database table entity, or in a typical database table object, you cannot create a duplicate column. Be very, very clear. So that is the reason I am trying to add a column to my table. Okay, initially when I altered it, it got successfully ran, but when I tried again to add same column, it actually given error. Okay, it actually given error saying the column is already exist, or you must not create specified column more than once. So the error is clearly stating you should not create a column which is already there in the table. Okay, so now we created a table and we altered we altered the table by adding a new column. Similarly, you can also try altering the table name. Okay, you can also try altering the column names. That is also possible. Okay, so you can try that. So now the basic thing here is, we have seen the create table statement, we know how to create a table. We have seen the alter table statement, we know how to add columns to a table after creation, right? So, and then you can also rename the table names, you can rename the column names by using alter table, you can rename the column types by using the alter table statements. This alter table statement is completely to change your metadata of the table. Be very, very clear. Okay, so let's move on to the next statement, which is actually drop table. Okay, so let us understand the drop table statement. Okay, so here if you see, I have employee table. Okay, and I'm just using drop table employee underscore details. Okay, so drop table employee underscore details. So when I execute this command, your table will be gone, right? Your table is gone. So drop table is a command that we will use to remove the table completely along with the data. Okay, so in real-time projects, be very, very cautious that you're not using this drop table statement until and unless you created the table for your testing purpose. If you created the table for your testing purpose and you completed your testing, then you want to remove the table, then only touch this drop table. If it is a project related table which came from the design and it got created and the project related data is there in the table, do not drop it. Okay, so as as much as possible, be aware that you in sometimes you maybe delete actual data unknowingly by using this drop table statement. Okay, so it is very, very important in the real time projects. If we delete some data, then it is very, very tedious job to get back that data again. And for some reason, if that data got deleted in the source itself, then it is impossible to retrieve the data. Though database team maintain backups, they need proper justification to give that backup to us. Okay, so try to maintain distance for this from this drop table, until unless if it is your own table and you created for your testing, you loaded test data and then you completed your testing, then you can straight away drop those tables to reduce the space on your database. But if it is a project related table, do not use this drop table statement. Okay, so And then let's move on to the next statement, truncate statement. Okay, so before going to the truncate statement, I want you to introduce insert statement. Okay, I want you to introduce, I want to introduce insert statement. So let us understand insert statement. Okay, so so first we will see the DML statements, then we will come back to the truncate later, because for the truncate to understand, you need data in the table. Okay, so let us see the select statement. So select is a statement we use in SQL to retrieve the table data. Okay. So understand this statement, guys. This statement is very, very important. We use this select for the projection, meaning to select the attributes from the table and to present or to visualize or to retrieve it. Okay. So this only purpose. Okay, you can extract data or you can retrieve data from one table or multiple tables using select. You are using select. That means, hey, I need some data from this table. Okay, so that is why you always use select with from clause. Be very, very clear. From table. Okay, so the syntax for this select statement is select star, meaning give me all the columns from table name. So from which table I want all the columns. So I want all the columns from the employee table. So I'm using select star from employee table, meaning, so give me all the columns data from employee table. Okay, that is the meaning for this statement. Okay, so let us understand. Okay, so we already dropped this. Let me quickly create the table. Create a table, employee underscore details. Okay, emp underscore id integer, emp underscore name varchar of max, emp underscore salary big int, emp underscore department number small int, mgr underscore id small int. Okay, so this is my table. Now my table is created. Okay, my table is created. Now let us see select star from employee details. So remember, when you are executing any SQL statement, you need to end that statement with a semicolon. Okay, this is the syntactical thing that you need to follow. Okay, it may be any statement. You need to end that statement with semicolon. Okay, so what we are doing now, we created a table and we are retrieving the data from the table by using the select statement. So the select statement, when you specify star along with the select statement, that means you are requesting all the columns to return. Okay, so if you don't want all the columns, you can always specify the column names in the select statement, so that your select statement will understand that you are not interested in all the columns, you are requesting only few columns. So it will return only the columns. Okay, so that is the importance of your select statement. So in real time, select plays a very key role. Okay, so you won't be able to see what is there in the table without select statement. Be very, very clear, right? So and select should be given along with the from statement. Okay, so from which table you are expecting the data. Okay, so now let us query this. So in SQL, you may be hearing a term called query. In the name itself, structured query language. Okay, so what is a query? Query means questioning. Or okay, so in any kind of presentations also we ask people any queries. Okay, meaning questioning. So you are questioning your database, or you are asking queries to your database software. So that's why we call all these statements as queries. Okay, so your database software will take your question and it will answer to your question. That's why we call it as query language. So we question the database software using all these statements. Okay. Now I asked my database software create a table with this statement. So it created and it has given the response. Okay. I'm asking my database, I'm querying my database with give me all the data from the employee details table. So it has written the output, but we don't have anything in the employee table, but it has returned the output, right? So your database software is a query based software. You ask a query, it will answer. So that's why we call this SQL language, which we are using to communicate with the database. We call this language as query language, right? So we write queries in this SQL to question the database and to extract or retrieve proper information from the database. Okay, so now we have seen the select statement. Let us understand what is insert statement, right? So DML, data manipulation language statements, also includes the insert statement. Okay, so insert statement, if you see here, this is the syntax for the insert statement. So how you will insert a record into the table? Okay, how you will insert a record into the table? So this is insert into insert into table name. Okay, and the column names. Okay, and the column names. Okay, so you need to specify all the column names. And the values for that column, right? Column names you need to specify. So let us take an example. I have employee ID column as my first, right? So I'm specifying one as my employee ID. I am specifying King as my employee name. So when you are giving characters or data or varchar type data types columns, when you are entering data into that columns, you need to give in single quotes. Remember, you need to give in single quotes. So here if you see, I have given one King, employee salary is 5,000, employee department number is 10. Okay, so I have declared salary as big int, I have declared department number as small int. Okay, so now my manager ID is XYZ. Sorry, my manager ID is, let us say, 1001. Okay, so this is my manager ID. Now when I execute this statement, you will get a message saying one row affected, meaning what that means, you are trying to insert a record into the table and you tried to use the insert into statement and it got inserted successfully. Okay, now let us see what is there in the table. Again, execute select star. See here, employee ID, employee name, employee salary, department number, manager ID. Right? So this is the data that it is stored in the backend. Okay. So now you can ask me, hey Venkat, we are manually doing this process, but in real time, how it will happen? So remember, as I already told you, there will be a API layer which will be connected to the database system. And that API layer is responsible to do all this insert, update, and you have done a transaction using your ATM command. Okay. So once you have done that transaction will be inserted into the backend table by using your API layer. It will take all the details from the front end that you have done, and then based on that information, it will create a statement at the backend and it will push the data to the backend table. That is what your API will do. Okay. So you need to relate. Okay. So here, let me insert one more record. Okay. Now this time I'm giving, like this. Let's see. Okay. So here, if you see, you have declared employee ID as integer, but you have given it as a character, right? You have given it as a character, but still it is able to take, right? So that is something that you need to understand. So, but when it will become a problem. It will become a problem when you do aggregations, right? So here, if you see, the column type is integer, but you are still able to insert the data of character type into it. Okay. So in few databases, it was strictly restricted. It won't allow you to insert this kind of values. Okay. So it will strictly restrict in Oracle kind of a database. If you declared a column with integer data type, it won't allow you to insert a string value into it. Okay. But here it is allowing. That means it is detecting the type based on the string. Okay. Or else let us see, let us try to put this like this. I think it will throw error now. I'm expecting it. Yes, see this. This is what I'm expecting. Okay. So even if it is a string value, but if you're passing a numerical value, then it will take, if the source data type is integer, even if you are passing in the single quotes, that doesn't matter. Inside the single quotes, if it is a number, that's okay, it will detect. But if it is a string type inside the single quotes, then it will straight away say that you have declared the integer column, but you should not enter any kind of alphabets into it. Okay. So that is something that you need to understand, the restriction part of it. Okay. So similarly, for varchar type also, right? So for the varchar type, let us say I declared my king variable. Sorry, I declared my this type, and then I am trying to insert this. It got inserted. Strange. So let me see why it got inserted. So employee name, I have given it as 1000. It got inserted, but my employee name is varchar. Will also allows the numbers. So we need to understand that as well. So here, if you see, it's a alphanumeric thing, but usually for character type, we pass them in the string. Okay. So let's try to pass. Okay. So for the varchar, it doesn't matter, but it matters with the integer, right? So even if it is a varchar, if you give it without quotes, it is taking. So let me try to pass. some others. This is all permutations and combinations, guys. I'm just trying to test this statements or behavior, how it works, right? So invalid column name king. Okay, so anyway, you have to provide it in the single quotes only. But if even if you enter integer values here, it is taking. So the a varchar data type, it is allowing you to enter integer values also into it. Okay, so that is the negative case testing. So we can always go with the positive case testing, positive case insertions, everything we can do. But if you want to do a negative testing, we have to have pass these permutations and combination values, then only we'll be able to understand the functionality of it, right? So fine, now we have the data. Now we know how to insert the data. And remember, whenever you declared a types and columns, try to follow these data types in your data also. Okay, that is the standard. Though database is behaving or not, that's secondary. But we have to, as a best practice, we have to follow our columns and data types from the table. Okay, so now we have this data available in the table. Okay, now the drop statement we have seen, it will remove entire table and its structure also. That means it will remove the complete table, metadata and data. But when we go for truncate, so truncate table will always removes only the data, not the metadata. So metadata will still exist. So that's the difference between a drop and a truncate. Okay, so truncate table will remove your complete data, not metadata, but your drop table statement will remove your metadata as well as data. Okay, so here if you see, I'm again entering a record into the table. Okay, so now something happened. Okay, fine. So let it be. So here I'm again entering a record into my table, and then I will try to execute the select statement here. Yes, I got my record. Okay, so this is what insert. So we know how to retrieve the data from a table. We know how to create a table. We know how to drop a table. We know how to alter a table, and we know how to truncate a table, right? And finally, let's see the update and the delete statements, and then we'll wind up for today. Okay, so update table. So this update table, update record is used when we want to change any particular values of any records in your table. You can actually use this update statement. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So let us understand this little bit more. Okay, so here if you see, update table name, set column name equals to value, comma, column name equals to value. Okay, so where is a clause that we have in SQL to specify the conditions? Okay, so here if you see, I'm using update statement along with the where clause. Okay, so let me execute it. See here, I have employee details table name or employee name from king to king underscore first. Okay, so I want to update only this record. Okay, so I may be having different employees whose name is also king, right? So if I use update employee details set employee name equals to king, king underscore king space first first. Okay, and then I'm specifying it where employee ID equals to 1. That means go and update the employee name column to king underscore first. So it will pick only this record and then update employee name. You can also specify a condition like where employee name equals to king. So if the people who have names with the king, then everything will be updated into king space first. So let's execute this. So this statement will run, right? So similar to this, we have delete statement, right? So you can also delete a record, a particular record from the table, or a condition based deletion you can do. See here, delete from employee details table I'm doing, and where employee ID equals to 1, I'm specifying condition. Hey, SQL Server database, go and remove a particular record from the employee details table whose employee ID is 1. If this condition matches multiple records, then it will remove multiple records. Be very, very clear. In a table, you can have, you can have multiple records, right? In a table, you can have multiple records. That's why you should be with very cautiousness when you are giving conditions with respect to deletions, especially. Okay, so in a table, when you are deleting a particular record based on a condition, you should give a proper condition which will go and remove the proper records. Okay, otherwise what will happen, unknowingly, if you are not properly validating the data and if you are not properly looking at the data, if you give delete statement, it will remove the records that matched with all your condition. So what will happen, you need to reach out to source team, again backup team, again admin team, a lot many things you need to face. So be very, very clear when you are hitting drop table or delete statements. Okay, so you should be very, very cautious. Okay, so we have seen the DML and DDL statements. Okay, so and we know how to create a table, and we know how to insert data into the table, we know how to update the data into the table, right? And we know how to delete the data from the table, right? So this we have seen, and we will also see DCL statements. So these are grant and revoke statements. So these are access related statements, as I already told you. So grant here, if you see the syntax itself, grant, select, insert on employee table to the respective user. Okay, so these statements will be taken care by administrators. Okay, so you don't need to bother about these statements. Okay, so tomorrow we will start with the where clause. Okay, so what is the importance of where clause in SQL, right? So we'll see that, and then we will quickly jump into the SQL functions. So in SQL, you have inbuilt functions that you can utilize to analyze your data, right? And you have different date functions. You can play with the dates, timestamps also, and you have different aggregation functions. You don't need to do any kind of manual calculations and all. You can apply inbuilt aggregation functions. Your SQL database will give you aggregated results as well. And we'll see the grouping or aggregated sets using uh, group by clause, having clause, and order by. Okay, so these are the things that we will concentrate tomorrow. Okay, so be ready to go a little bit deeper into the SQL, guys. Okay, I request you to create multiple different tables in the database software that you have created, right? So, and I'm giving you one more task today. So yesterday I have discussed about schema, right? So in a database we can specify our tables with the schema, right? So I want you to create a schema. So I'm just giving a task here, just note down it, guys. I need you I want you to create employee, or else let me put it in a proper database model. I want you to create a college, or else education underscore institute. This is the database name. Okay, inside the database name I want to create students schema. Okay, inside the student schema I want to have student underscore details table, and this table will be having student underscore id, student underscore name, student underscore roll number. Okay, and student underscore branch. Okay, so this is the students table, and then I'll say student underscore transactions table, and here student id comma transaction id comma I can say student id, transaction id, and amount comma reason. Okay, this is my students schema, and here I have departments schema. Okay, in this schema I want departments table, departments. Here I need branch id, branch name. Okay, so wherein I have first branch as ECE, second branch as IT, third branch as triple E, something like that. Okay, so this is the task for tomorrow, guys. You need to create a education institute database. Inside that education institute database I want you to create three schemas including courses as well. Courses underscore offered, this is one of the table, and inside sorry, this is one of the schema, and inside courses offered schema I have courses table, and I have course id. Okay, and fee details, total fee for this course id. Okay, so if it is ECE, how much, it is triple E, how much, so something like that. So try to insert proper data, try to create your tables with the proper types, and come back tomorrow. I'll review your SQL code that you have written. Okay, so hope you are clear with the task. Any questions? Any questions? Respond.
Yes, clear.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So this is the task, guys. I'm just copy pasting this thing here. So database you need to create, and inside the database you need to create a schema, and in under that schema you need to create the tables. How to create the schema, Venkat, you did not explain. You explore. Okay. So if you ask me how to create the schema, I ask you to explore. So because The reason is, if I am telling everything and if I am giving a task, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so there should be something that you need to explore. You put your brain to derive that, right? So that is why I'm just leaving that schema creation to you. Okay, so now the task is create a database in your software, and then create a schema. Inside the schema, come up with all these table structures and data into it. Okay, so tomorrow you have to complete this task. It's a very simple task and easy one. At least people who did not started practicing, I request you to start practicing all these things. Okay, so day to day from today, I will be giving lot of activities and tasks in the form of SQL queries. You need to start practicing. Okay, that's all I have for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining once again tomorrow. Yeah.
Thanks, Venki.